Welcome to Life Between Titles. I'm your host, Saman. Today's episode is about transformation, the kind where everything begins uncertain but ends with purpose. My guest, Sarah Johnson, has lived that transformation. She went from a creative career in design and technology to earning a doctorate in occupational therapy. Along the way, she faced imposter syndrome, burnout, and the fear of starting over midlife. Yet she discovered clarity through reflection and the courage to push through discomfort. This episode is for anyone that's standing at that crossroads, wondering if it's too late. Sarah's story proves that purpose doesn't disappear when one chapter ends. It simply takes new shape. Let's get it. Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. How are
I
you
appreciate
doing?
you coming on. It's good to see you and hear from you again. It's been quite a few years.
Yeah, I think over a decade.
Yeah. What has happened
Yeah.
in 10 years? Sarah, you've got this amazing inspirational journey that we'll definitely dive into in the segment. But before we get started, I'd like to maybe give the audience a little bit more color as to who you are. So I'm hoping that you can answer a few one-word answer questions for me. You ready for this?
Game.
All right. If you had to pick any word in the English language to describe you, what would you choose?
Effervescent.
Ooh, why is when I think of effervescent, I think of like a nice calming drink for my upset stomach. But why did you choose that word?
Bubbly, a little spicy, tingly,
Yeah.
interesting, all around enjoyable. I don't know.
I love it. I love it. All right. Second one. If you had to choose a number to represent you, any number, what would it be?
42. Very
Okay.
the meaning of life, the universe, and everything.
That's
It's
deep.
Hitchhiker's Guide for the
Yeah.
nerds. For the nerds.
That's deep. That's
Yeah.
deep. I love it. I love it. All right. Last question before we dive in. If you could choose any animal to describe you, what would that animal be?
These are good. That's a hard one. You got me stumped on that.
No wrong answers.
I was thinking like quokka.
Oh, I don't even know what that is. What is that?
They're those cute little animals that people take selfies with because they look like they're smiling all the time. Apparently they're really nice and have absolutely no sense of fear for humans.
Right. Right. Yeah, usually those cute animals that like really look good on Instagram, they're also nocturnal. And so, they're like sleeping all day and then all of a sudden they're just wide awake at night, sort of like my cats.
And people are just bothering them.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive into maybe a little bit of your background, Sarah, before we get into some of the professional stuff. Tell me about where you were born and where you grew up.
I was born and raised in Butte, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will say, "Oh, I've driven through there," when I say that.
I've driven through there.
Yeah, it's a really rich history of mining there. It was a mining town for a long time, and then um, a center of labor organizing, and was at one point one of the biggest cities west of the Mississippi, the first to have electricity, and then kind of everything busted, and it was a bit of a ghost town when I was growing up. So um, it's just a really interesting place. A lot of
How did
immigrant
your family
population.
get there?
Um, my mother's side of the family um, had a homestead there. So they had been there for, I think, 4 generations, and they came by way of Canada
Okay.
first. And it was Montana Territory, I think, at the time. It wasn't a state when they got there. My dad's side of the family, my grandpa took a job at a mine in a nearby town. He was a mining engineer, mining geologist, and they actually came by way of the Amazon jungle to Montana.
Wow.
So
Whoa.
yeah, if you can imagine that adventure, talk about,
Holy smokes.
interesting changes in life. That's a big
Yeah.
adjustment. So yeah, so that's how they all got to be in Montana.
That might be another whole
podcast segment of what that journey looked like.
I have books full of letters and stories that we had them write down when they were older, just because there were too many just amazing experiences that they had going to different places, different mines, and different mineral rich places. So that took them to a lot of far flung locations.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
I'm in this process too of writing a memoir of my own family story. And when I
Right.
was
Yeah.
younger, I never had a desire to document this stuff. But as I've gotten older, one, the more stuff I've forgotten. But I also just think that documenting in some sort of narrative is respectful of sort of where you've come from and the journeys that you've had, like as a family. And more times than not, we look at people and we think that they're very one dimensional, but all this stuff has really shaped us to who you are. And clearly, like, your families have this rich history as well.
Yeah.
It'd be great to see sort of like how, and maybe we can get into that later on in the segment, how that's inspired you to sort of navigate through the next maybe 20, 30 years of your life.
Like, yeah, that's such an interesting thing you mentioned about wanting to know when you're older. I think your relationship to your parents really changes as you get older. And when you're little, they're just sort of this, all knowing, all authoritative being in your life, and you see them as just that. And they were a whole person before you got here, and
Right.
with a whole set of circumstances they may or may not have shared with you. Yeah.
Right. What was it like growing up in Montana?
Um, gosh, I don't know where to start. It's such a beautiful place, and there were so many like wonderful outdoorsy things to do. Like I got to learn how to ski when I was little. It was very accessible. It wasn't like a rich person thing to do. It was just a thing you went and
Right.
did.
Right.
Lots of outdoors. It also was a difficult place to grow up as a sort of smart, weird, fat girl who liked arts and culture, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity for that there. And so it was pretty itching to get out early on. And I don't want anybody to take that as a diss to Butte. Butte's a really cool place. Go visit. It's cool. But yeah, it just kind of wasn't for me. So I was just kind of plugging along there, thinking about my escape for the most part.
Yeah. How did that desire to leave Montana manifest itself? Did you take deliberate actions in high school and or college or after that to say like, okay, I got to get out of here because this place is not reflective of who I am or my personality? And like, what did that look like?
Yeah. So, well, I was lucky enough that my parents had tried to take me to cities and take me to travel. I also have, a lot of family that lives in other places. I have a very multicultural family. And so I got a lot of exposure to different ideas and what it looks like to actually live in a place like that. We also took trips to out to the West Coast a couple times. And then I was really involved in the art club in high school, and I loved creative things and wasn't a great student, which is going to be really funny later on when you hear the rest of the story.
Right.
I was a terrible student. I never did my homework. I tested well. So I went to art club after school a lot, and that's kind of where I found my community. And we went on a big thing called Art Trek, where
Uh-huh.
we got to go in a school bus. We went to Seattle, we went to Vancouver, BC. We did a huge art tour of all those places. I really fell in love with Seattle,
Wow.
and kind of I knew I wanted to go to college because I kind of felt like I had to, in a
Uh-huh.
sense. I think there's a lot of pressure for kids to figure out what they want to do and go to college. I don't feel like my parents necessarily were very pressuring on get into a good school, go to they're like figure out what you want to do, right? And get it. Education was very valued in my family.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I have to go to college. I had this in my head. So, but I wasn't a good student, so I wasn't I wasn't gunning for a law degree or anything like that, right?
Right.
So, so I thought, well, I'm decently creative. I love art. Graphic design came up, so I ended up coming out to Seattle to get a design degree.
W- Were there things that you saw in your everyday life that inspired you to be a graphic artist and get that degree? Because it is quite an investment, right? Like you're talking about thousands of dollars
Yeah.
in the next couple of years of your life. And so I'm interested in knowing, what types of things inspired you and what drove that commitment for at least that part of your life.
Yeah, I think, what I was looking for was a way to use my creative skills that I could earn a living with. And it was a sort of a practical choice, maybe a little ill-advised, given hindsight, right? Being
Right.
2020. I was trying to figure out what to do. I really didn't know. I didn't have a lot of direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of sat down and was like, well, these are some skills that I have somewhere where I think I could do it,
Yeah.
and where, I got an associate's degree. I didn't even go for a 4-year school because I really was sort of that unsure. And it was like, I just have to get out of this place. I have to figure it out. I did go to a
Yeah.
year of college locally in Butte before I left
Okay.
to get, to take some of the sting off of the cost
Right.
with a local tuition. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of this, I gotta do something kind of
Yeah.
a, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you, looking back on it, I know maybe this is forwarding a little too far ahead right now, but looking back at it, do you regret that time and that commitment to going to art school now? Now that you've sort of shifted gears away from that field?
No, I mean, set me up for where I am now, right?
Hmm.
And it got me to Seattle. It got me to my
Hmm.
friend groups. It got me to a lot of really interesting experiences, and it did keep me reasonably employed. So,
Right.
in that sense, it served its purpose. I think it was too expensive, and I think I have $5,000 in loans left on that still.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
I always wanted to go to an art school, but I ended up going to a traditional university. What was it like for the audience that has never seen an art school? Like, what can you expect from
oh
going
my
there?
gosh. It was the Art Institute of Seattle, which is not known for being fantastic. I will say
Really?
that.
I thought it was a great school, like as an outsider looking in.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think it was a little bit it was interesting. I think it drew a very interesting group of people to it, and that was one of the things that was the most fun about going to art school is I was surrounded by creative people. That was also really intimidating, right? So you come from a small town where you seem like you're pretty creative, and then you get there and you immediately realize that you're actually terrible. And you have you're not anywhere near as talented as the people who are in school with you, and that's pretty intimidating. And I actually had a hard time with that. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. I mean, you go through, you know, classical drawing classes where you have a nude model and you sit and draw the same person in the same pose for 4 hours. Classes were four
Yeah.
hours long.
Yeah.
And principles of design and some business and law, copyright law kind of stuff. You really need to understand that if you're going to freelance work. And then portfolio and process, like proving that you have the skills to do each type of design, typography, logos, layout, plus like computer classes like layout programs, stuff like Photoshop and InDesign and things like that.
One of the things that I've been talking about recently with people is this idea of imposter syndrome and how we can easily fall into that trap. I mean, I know that even up until my latest role, I've had that imposter syndrome. Did
Mhm.
you feel any of that when you were going to college? You mentioned that you had colleagues and classmates that were exceptionally better, however we categorize that in art, at some of these things. And if you did feel that, how did you sort of get over the imposter syndrome?
100% had imposter syndrome. I think partially because I was so lukewarm about my direction at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily a calling of any kind. It was just a functional thing. And then I started doubting whether I would actually be able to do that.
Yep.
And I would say I still had imposter syndrome well after college. And that's partially that lack of direction, but partially just the circumstances around my graduation. It was right after one of the big tech bubbles happened, and Seattle was heavily affected, which meant a lot of those design jobs went away. And then I graduated right around 9/11. The atmosphere and um, the ability to get those entry level jobs was really hard. I remember applying for so many jobs and getting one interview over, months and months. And I ended up actually going and working other jobs for a long time and trying to freelance, trying to build some kind of a business. I kind of really, being in my early 20s, not knowing what I was doing, not knowing how to run a business, not knowing, not having the social and business skills to really communicate very well with people. Yeah, so I definitely had imposter syndrome, and it didn't help me get better at what I was doing. I think, sometime in my mid 20s, I was introduced to the fact that I'm a perfectionist
Okay. Okay.
and how destructive that actually is, because there's a concept in psychology of mindset. It's a lot of people who do self-improvement will talk about it. It's Carol Dweck is the professor and psychologist who has researched this forever, and it's basically looking into what are what are the things that make people able to get mastery, able to excel, able to get better at things. It comes down to what she calls a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And essentially, a fixed mindset is when you think, well, I'm just not good at that, if you're not good at it on the first try.
Right.
It's a real trap for people who are smart or who tend to catch on to things pretty quickly. And it
Uh-huh.
tends to hit them a little bit at a higher level, like college, where
Uh-huh.
suddenly things aren't as easy as they were before. And you really have to apply some skills. And if you didn't have to try hard before, you never built the skills to be able to tackle a greater
Yep.
challenge. And
Yep.
so a growth mindset is essentially, I'm not good at this yet. I need to work harder. I need to put in more practice, and then I'll get better. Because getting better at something and being good at something is about the time and effort that I put into it, not about a natural state of being that I have. And that was really powerful for me to kind of look into that and realize that and go, oh, I see that in myself. And not everybody's a whole fixed mindset. Not everybody's a whole growth mindset. We tend to have different areas of our life where we feel differently about those things. There are areas where we do give ourselves grace and say, oh, I just need to practice more to get better at that. Working out's a great example. Like, you don't expect to go be a champion power lifter the first time that you know, do a deadlift. You think,
Right.
I have to build up my weight slowly over time, and then I'll be good at this. And so that's, somewhere where people have an easy time having a growth mindset. But when it
Right.
comes to things that are related to work or identity, if it's really close to your identity and you're not good at it right away, it can feel, I think, very threatening. And that can lead into imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I find that super fascinating. I was listening to the Diary of a CEO podcast, and he had on somebody super smart. I can't remember his name, some scientist. And they were talking about the 10,000 hour rule and the mastery of that and the challenges of having a mindset like that and the restrictions that it causes people because you're so focused on one thing over and over and over again, especially when they're young. They don't sort of broaden, their commitment to potentially other things. And it's weird, like to listen to all of these social science podcasts because you don't really know what the hell to believe. Right? You're like, one guy's telling me I got to put in 10,000 hours to be really good at this. And another guy's telling me, well, no, you shouldn't put into that 10,000 hours because you might be then ignoring some of these other things you need to do. From your perspective, as you were growing up, how did you approach trying to master crafts like graphic design or building a business? Because those are all skill sets that, take a long time and a lot of commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I failed pretty miserably at it, to be quite honest with you.
Right. Right.
I think that was the problem, right? I was this perfectionist, and I thought that I had to be the best at something or I wasn't good at all.
Right.
When in fact, there are all kinds of places in the middle as you're coming up and learning things um, to do what works and to do what's good enough.
Right.
You don't have to be winning a design award every time you make something for a small business. They just need it to get their customers in the door, right?
Right. Right.
They just need the logo for whatever. It's you're not doing a Nike brand deal every day. You work your way up to that level,
Right.
right? That's a high level. And I really, looking back, I wish I would have understood that, but I kind of had to come through it to know it.
Yeah.
And that's just
I
kind of
agree.
my journey on that.
I agree. I agree. Um, Sarah, you mentioned that you did some freelancing during this period of time. What other things did you get yourself into?
Oh my gosh, it was all over the place.
Right.
What did I do? I did conferences for Microsoft. I like
Wow. Okay.
cleaned up their PowerPoint presentations for conferences so that they were on
Uh-huh.
brand,
Yeah.
which was fun because at 21 I got to, go to New Orleans and LA and travel around. That was cool. Worked at a little frame gallery. I was a case manager for a forensic psychologist for a time, for several years, which was sort of like paralegal and report writing work, um, because I was a good writer. And I was an assistant for an architect for some time. I helped pull permits from the city and get drawings where they needed to go, and did her billing and her bookkeeping for her. And then sort of economic downturn happened in 2008, which took away the architect job because the building stopped. And she couldn't keep me on. And then, well, I had to fire myself because I was the one doing the books. So I had to have the talk, say, you know what, you can't afford me right now, so it's time.
Right.
She was so nice to me. And then um around about that time, someone who I was in a dance troupe also. I was running a fire dancing troupe all of this time as well. Uh,
Yeah.
I was really all over the place, multi-talented generalist,
Yeah.
I guess. And I one of the people in my troupe was working at this startup that was just getting crazy busy, and they needed a photo retoucher. And so, my background was design, but I know Photoshop. She got me up to speed on what I needed to know for that particular job. I went in and interviewed, and then that startup ended up going gangbusters. It was kind of a unicorn startup, and that was a great opportunity. That's how I actually got my first really full-time design role, because I worked in that photo retouching department for a while, ended up managing a team there, and then I moved into marketing design. And I was there for 7.5 years. So that was where I had a real career happen, you know? So yeah, that was a really good opportunity at the right time. And there I didn't really feel the imposter syndrome because my skills were needed, and because it was a startup, I ended up seeing all these opportunities to contribute and improve processes and establish processes. I got to teach people. I love teaching people things. I used to teach dance, and kind of figured out, wow, I like doing all these other things, I think, a little better than I like doing the design part
Right.
of it.
Yeah. I definitely want to dig into the startup life. But before we do that, there's such a wide breadth of things that you took on at this early stage in your professional life. What do you think was maybe the common denominator across all those things? Because you look at it at a surface and you're like, how do any of these things actually match up, right? Like the bookkeeping, the fire troop, the freelance design stuff. And but for you, it just made sense in your head. What was that common denominator?
It's a great question. Part of it was just seeing an opportunity to do something and try something out. I think a lot of me was kind of searching for purpose, which is really on brand for
Yeah.
the conversation today. I think it comes back to, I still was not sure about design. If I felt like I had made the wrong choice. Opportunities came to try different things, in some way leverage my ability to pick things up really quickly.
Hmm.
Um, my interest in trying new things, learning new things. I love to gather knowledge,
Yeah.
and to a certain extent, creativity as well. I think all of them had a pretty heavy cognitive, critical thinking component to them. And that's always attractive to me. If I do the same thing all the time, I do get a bit bored.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so just kind of really trying to find my way, honestly, and kind of just not sure about what I was doing or where I was going, and feeling honestly a bit behind in life, you know? Um,
Yeah. I don't know if you'll ever feel ahead in life.
yeah, I don't know if that's possible.
When I was growing up during that time, I always constantly thought that I had to hit these milestones as well. And if I didn't hit them, I was like behind my colleagues or, I mean, especially, growing up in an Asian Cambodian community, you have that pressure to, succeed or do whatever it was that was sort of the immigrant story of success.
Yeah,
And if you didn't hit those things, it was like frowned upon in some ways. And so there is always that pressure of trying to figure out like how to get to that point. It's very stressful because at that age, like you just don't know sometimes like what you
yeah,
like and don't like.
no. We expect high school kids to kind of know what they want to do for the rest of their life, and their prefrontal cortex hasn't even gelled yet. It's not even
Right.
formed, right?
Yeah. I don't even think my prefrontal cortex is gelled yet, and I'm 45.
It's and some people do, right? Like, maybe skipping forward a bit, but in my cohort for grad school, there was somebody who turned 21 during our time there. And I was just impressed. You'd have to do a condensed bachelor's to get there at that point, running start.
Yeah.
Some people are really locked in. They find out early on, this is what I want to do. This is what my
Right.
purpose is. And not just that's wonderful. Like, I'm so happy for them. I hope they have long, wonderful careers doing
Yeah.
that, but some of us have to come about it in a very wobbly, roundabout fashion, and then when it hits and then it's good, and then you feel like you're on the right track, and then you know.
At your time at this fast growing startup, and for people that don't know, there was a period in Seattle history, I would say between like 2000 to maybe the 2008s, where we had the whole session and all that stuff, that tech startups were highly romanticized, at least in my opinion. People you read about these companies that are going big and people just getting rich and being super successful. And you spent 7.5 years at one. What do you think were some of the things that kept you there, that motivated you to get up and go to work and commit almost a decade of your life there?
Right, yeah. Well, I think in the early so it truly after, I would say, about 5 years, it was no longer a startup culture. I think they tried to hold on to that, but it's really hard once something grows to a certain size, it becomes an established business with all the benefits and detriments of that, right? But in the early days of the startup, I'd spend 12-hour days there,
Yeah.
and, um, it was constantly challenging. There are kind of no rules. It's a bit Wild West when it's new, right? We all show up, we have a problem, and we all work together to tackle that problem. There's a lot of sort of blurred lines between what's one person's responsibility and what's another person's responsibility. And there's a real ability to have agency in that
Yeah.
environment, to take the lead on something and to really um, say, you know what, this isn't working. I'm going to fix it.
Hmm.
And I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
I do too.
Uh,
I do too.
Yeah, that was really attractive to me. I think that's one of the things that motivated me to those crazy hours early on. Plus, I had incentive stock options.
Right.
I didn't have a ton as a designer, like somebody in engineering or in the C-suite person would have, but it was a nice incentive,
Yeah.
and it did pay me some money. It did afford me some space when I was ready to career change. Beyond that, it was growing so fast that I was always teaching somebody the ropes, training new hires. I got to move up. There's like opportunities for advancement if you're doing well. Come around a little more frequently when you're employee number 60 and now there's 2,000 people, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden. And you're looking around going, what happened? How are all these people here? Who are all these people? And so that's pretty fun. And then obviously after a few years of doing one job, I got to switch to another job. And then that role had lots of different things I could do within the role. Eventually we went public. It was a pretty wild public ride. Like,
Yeah, I
just
bet.
watching
I bet.
watching that stock price rise all day was pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was having a good day that day. And then we did get bought out, and
Right.
that then changed things a little bit, and it got bigger. It got a little less easy to move around. When I had wanted some other opportunities to, I was thinking about switching my career at that point. I was in design for a while. I was saying, you know what? Okay, I've done this. I know what this is. I don't think I want to do this forever. It's coming up on feeling really too late to go back to school, which I don't. It's not. It's never too late. You can go back to school. But it was starting to feel a little. I'm like, okay, I got to make a decision. I started exploring some options, and around that time, I think the stress really caught up to me, and I I ended up having some health problems and some chronic pain, and that whole process was just really difficult to deal with and also maintain that level of performance. And it was such a struggle. And I really was like, this didn't need to be, I got myself sorted out. I figured it out, right? That didn't need to be as hard as that was, right? And I really started thinking that I wanted to, my job was to get people to click on ads and buy stuff, right? A necessary function. It's a necessary job in a business. It wasn't really fulfilling for me to do that. And, I started thinking, I want to spend every day doing something that makes the world a better place, somehow that helps people. I really started liking the idea of helping people who were going through similar issues, who, were mid-career and still wanting to work and still wanting to do things. And there's a lot of supports for like the elderly or for people who are fully disabled by something to where they can't work anymore, but there are people who are kind of in the middle. They might be managing a chronic illness or um, have a temporary setback or, just going through something and really could use this like a more holistic support system and kind of shortcuts to like how do you manage this? How do you arrange your life around this? And so that was kind of what was on my mind when we had a layoff, and I suddenly found myself with an opportunity. It's never fun to get laid off. There's so many people going through layoffs in tech right now, and I'm really feeling for all of them. I think we tie our identities to work so much that it can be a really difficult process for people to go to, especially in tech, they're used to being able to find a job really easily. And right now I'm watching people really struggle and apply a lot of places and not get any movement. And that's kind of what happened to me. Of course, I was on unemployment, so I started applying for jobs right away, and that kind of wasn't really going anywhere. It started harkening back to when I graduated and I couldn't find a job, and I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
here we go again, right? And that's kind of when I found this program through unemployment that was a career transition service for people. It was meant for displaced workers, truly. But anybody on unemployment could take it. And it was a 2-month course at the local community college. And that's kind of where I settled into OT as my choice.
Yeah. For people that don't know, what is OT?
Yes. OT, occupational therapy. So a lot of people are confused about occupational therapy. It's such a broad scope of practice, but essentially at the heart, it's a rehabilitation profession. And so at the heart of it is the belief that in getting people back to doing the things they need to do, want to do, or expected to do, those are occupations.
Okay.
And so what that looks like in practice is people in a pediatric setting who are teaching kids handwriting because that's a child's occupation, teaching them play, children with autism, maybe like helping them with social skills, play skills, things like that, because that's a child's occupation. Basic activities of daily living, somebody who might have a limb difference or difficulty controlling their muscles and can't um, take care of their daily hygiene practices because they need some adaptive strategies. And it can look like working in an inpatient rehab hospital with people who just had a stroke, who need to learn how to do everything over again with maybe one arm instead of the other one that's not working now. It looks I think on the surface, it can look a lot like PT to people because we do the physical side of things, we do the biomechanical, but we also encompass the psychological, the spiritual. It's like a whole person. We think about social systems, we think about supports, we think about ergonomics, adaptive strategies. So we take kind of all these pieces of what makes a person able to perform a function, and we work on whatever is needing support with that person.
Yeah, that's sounds amazing. And like, I didn't even know that occupational therapy was that broad. And I want to definitely dive deeper into that. But before we get there, a little bit about your time at the unemployment program. More times than not, you don't hear people saying, "Hey, like I'm in an unemployment program," because there's a certain stigma, right? Like it's like you don't have the skills to get another job, so you just don't talk about it. Like I know, like I've actually been in one of those programs where they were teaching skills that may interest you in your next occupation. What was it like for you going through that program, and what did you get out of it?
Yeah, well, so I had all these ideas in my head of what I wanted to do. I needed the time and space to think about them. This program afforded me 2 months of time fully focused on what are you gonna do next? Um, and I had also, like, obviously I had a layoff, so I had a severance. I had this, like I had a partner who was gainfully employed. It was just like this moment to breathe and think. And it was I'm not ashamed at all of taking it because I think what I did is see a fantastic opportunity at the right
100%.
moment, and I went for it. And it was super interesting. A lot of the people in the class were either older in industries that were changing to where they wouldn't be able to find a job in their industry, or they were homemakers who now had kids out of the house and needed to go get a job and needed to kind of figure out what they could do. Or there were several people who were ex-military and who were transitioning out of that sort of structure of the military into what am I going to do in public life, or where am I going to use my GI Bill, right? I'm just not sure yet. I did this exact specific function in the military and it's so ultra specific. What how does that turn into something else, right? And the class was partially because it was really built for people transitioning. There was like a section that was just basic computer skills, which obviously I didn't need. I ended up helping people most of that part of the class, which is fine. I was happy to. They were a wonderful group of folks. And the rest of it, we spent really diving into what our skills and abilities are and then taking that knowledge and seeing where does it apply to another type of industry or another position. And so one of the things we did was a dependable strengths exercise, which I
Okay,
found
what is that?
super valuable. And I would encourage anybody to do this. Sometimes there's classes run near you. It's fun to do it in a group because you go and you write down stories. I'm trying to remember the process, but you basically write down stories from your life where you feel like you were doing great or you did something amazing or you felt good doing it, and you write it down as a little story. And then you go read those stories to the people in the class. And everybody, as you're reading, they do kind of what we did at the beginning where you write down one word, but they'd
Okay.
listen to your story and they'd write down one word like determined or compassionate, or how they would essentially code what you told them, your traits that you were telling them about. And then at the end, we all got this, like, I still have it, this huge sheet of paper with all the words written on it that were us. And then it's very vulnerable, but it's also really wonderful to hear about what people see in you that you might not be able to see reading your own story.
Yeah.
I think that's the value of doing it with a group. You can definitely do it on your own. I'm sure there's probably a website out there with a quiz or something like that. And so you take all that and then you start coding it and you start winnowing it down to your best qualities. And then you use that when you think about interviewing, when you think about doing a personal statement, when you think about elevator pitching to people, like that question of like, who are you?
Right.
Right. And it helps you just get to the heart of that so that you don't ever feel sort of caught off guard. You know who you are and you know what you're doing. Right. I thought that was a really powerful process. The other thing that we did was we took a lot of those, those job board surveys that tell you, you say, oh, I like this, or yes, I do this well, or I don't do that well. And it spits out a list of potential careers, right?
Hmm.
And that's kind of, it's not going to give you the right career, but it's going to give you a place to start researching. And so then we would research the careers that were interesting to us, see what it actually takes to do that career, what kind of school is involved, what kind of um, time commitments, what are the job prospects? What are the job prospects in your area specifically? Is it a growing field or is it shrinking? Is it, basically looking at, is this a good idea for me to go into this career? And, I had thought possibly that I wanted to do counseling, psychology. And I still feel like, gosh, I could do that if I wanted
Right.
to,
Yeah.
like that's very attractive to me as well. But OT kept coming up. And the more I looked into it, the more I said, wow, you can kind of use some counseling skills in this. But you can also, I had been a dancer. You can also help people feel better physically. You can also talk to people about their lifestyle and how to manage a chronic illness. You can also, you can work in mental health. You can work in pediatrics. You can work in geriatrics. And then the other part of it was like, once you have the degree, you're not locked into one thing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, for instance, I'm specializing in hand therapy now. That's one subspecialty of OT. And PTs can also be hand therapists as well. That's very biomechanical. It's very much on the physical side, although you do get some diagnoses where you need the psychological side as well, and you need the nervous system and everything involved. But if down the road I say, you know what, I just really want to work with, um, older population on fall prevention, I can go work with the older population on fall prevention. I'm still utilizing the same skill set, but I can have a new challenge and a different thing. Um, I love hand therapy. I'm super gung ho about that, but I loved that there was this profession that once you made that commitment, big commitment to schooling, huge, huge commitment, that there were so many options and it was growing and the pay is okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's not the only thing, right? I want to go to work every day feeling like I helped somebody, and I do feel like that.
I um First, I absolutely love sort of like the reflective nature of your time in the unemployment program. It sounds like that period of your life gave you an opportunity to do the reflection, because more times than not, we're just moving so fast that it's hard to just even sit down and think about things. But the other thing it sounds like it did was it gave you some perspective and or tools to make a change. And I find it absolutely incredible when do things that takes a lot of bravery, like, hey, I did this for 20 years of my life and now I'm going to do something completely opposite of that, and it's very, very scary. What did you think was maybe some of the things that helped you make that transition during this period of your life? Was it some of the tools that you talked about with the strength chart, or was it just a series of like different combinations of things?
I think it's a combination of factors. Part of it was that I did kind of more understand that problem with perfectionism. I did understand that I really needed a field where I felt challenged every day. Was so uncomfortable with the situation that I was in, even though it was paying the bills, even though it was a perfectly respectable job, even though and it's a job that's wonderful for so many people. And a lot of people would be like, "That's a great job. What a fun job," right? And it
Yeah.
wasn't for me. It wasn't for me,
Yeah.
and I was really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's enough friction and enough discomfort that that opportunity really does kick you in the butt to
Right.
just get you out there. Truly that moment to breathe was really important, and the sort of structured process of reflection that would happen through that, which is incidentally a thing I love about OT is it is a reflective practice. Reflection is actually a part of our practice in order to improve ourselves as practitioners.
Right.
Um, the other part was like at the end of that 2 months, I came out of there with a full plan. I knew where I could
Wow.
apply to school. I knew what the process for applying there was. I knew what all the prerequisite classes were. I knew exactly what I needed to do step by step to make this happen. Having a roadmap is just it's a powerful thing because you'll start to feel like things get tough along the way and you
Yeah.
start to feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? Things get really uncomfortable. There are some dark nights of the soul along the way, but you have a roadmap and a plan and you can gut check yourself and be like, "No, I'm still on the right path. This is still what I want to do." Um, yeah.
So you went back to school after the unemployment program, or you were applying to get into a school after this period?
Yeah, I got on with a creative agency so that I could start temping and because again the full I wasn't going to apply for a full-time job going straight back to school.
Right.
So I ended up doing some temping, which was fantastic actually. I really enjoyed that and applied for the University of Washington because I needed a bachelor's degree to get into grad school. So if you recall, I had an associate's degree in graphic design.
Right. Yep.
So I had to finish up a bachelor's at UW, got into UW, majored in psychology, which is, OTs, there's a tendency for the bachelor's to be exercise science, kinesiology, and psychology, because those are all
Okay.
really good basis for that degree. Any bachelor's degree can get you into OT school. Truly any. There
Okay.
were people with,
Will my
bio.
communications degree get me in there?
It will if you take the medical prereqs. You'd have to go take
Okay.
all of the
Okay.
medical prerequisites. But yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's truly because it's holistic. It's a profession that values people with diverse backgrounds and experiences. I think that's a strength of it. And you know, it's still, even though we value that, there's a problem with diversity in OT. It's primarily women and primarily white women. So, um, I would love to see some new face.
Yeah. So you
How can
went
I
you went
support you?
from you went from tech, which also skews one direction, to now
Yeah,
the other side of it.
yeah.
Okay. I understand.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a great need for cultural competency
Yeah.
when you're doing rehab. You work with everybody, every culture,
Right?
every language.
Everybody's got problems. Everybody's got problems.
They do, and they have different ideas of what rehab looks to them. And OT, like the great thing about OT is that we really try to get at the heart of what matters to you
Yeah.
before we make a treatment plan. That's truly like what are we doing if it doesn't matter to you, right?
Yeah. For
Like
sure.
there are people who come from a culture where their family is going to do a lot of the caretaking tasks for the elders, right?
Yep.
So if I'm
Absolutely.
working on how to do your hair for you, like if you can't comb your hair, it's like you don't care about that. Your
Yeah.
grandkid is going to do that for you, but you care
Yep.
about playing with your grandkids.
Yep.
And that can be what
Absolutely.
we focus on in therapy. It can get a little
Interesting.
tricky because in the hospital, we have to meet goals related to basic activities of daily living.
Okay.
That's about insurance and reimbursement. But the great thing about OTs is we understand that the same functions that allow you to brush your hair are the same functions that allow you to do the thing that you want to do. And so our work gets you to both places. But we're working with you on what you care about because that is what's important.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I've always wondered, people in that field and in that profession, how they end up there and why they chose that. Because one, I think generally speaking, you have to have a pretty deep sense of compassion to be able to like absorb all these problems that people have and then help them get better. But I also think, people in that field, you have to be able to communicate at such like varied levels because you have people with such different diversities. In your undergrad time at did you already know you were going to get into occupational therapy? And were there classes specifically that you took to help you be set up for success there?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I had that great roadmap out of the unemployment program that I went to. And the goal was OT school. Choosing the psych bachelor's was a bit of a insurance policy.
Yep. Which, by the way, is very, very hard to get. Like, I took a psych class when I was there, and I was like, man, this is a little too rough for me.
It's so much reading. Anybody
Yeah.
who's in like computer science, engineering, like they get into psych class and they're like, oh my God, there's
Yeah.
so much reading. I can read a research article so fast, so fast.
Wow. Yeah, not me.
Um,
That's
I have
tough.
I built some muscles in that department. But yeah, so it was an insurance policy because I still was like my fallback was still counseling.
Okay.
So the psych undergrad would then be good for applying to grad school to be a counselor, right?
Okay.
It kind of worked for both ideas. So for psychology there, I took a lot of classes that I thought would help with rehab, like cognition, memory. So really neuroscience
Hmm.
adjacent classes. There's obviously a group of classes I had to take for the base psychology classes, but then I also took a class on mindfulness because I know that
Yeah.
mindfulness is a really great tool for pain management, and that's something I would like to help people with.
Right.
And I also took, I had to take a lot of my prerequisites at the community college, unfortunately,
Okay.
for med school because not med school, for OT school, but they're medical prerequisites, to be very
Right.
clear. Just because I was going to the UW Tacoma campus and they don't have the medical school there, so they didn't have like anatomy and physiology and like the lower level bio and chem classes that I needed on the schedule that I needed. And I had to start over in math because I had an art degree.
Right.
I had to start in basic math at the community college, sort of concurrently. So I'd be taking one class at the community college and
Oh, that's rough.
a full load at the school, and then classes over the summer at the community college, to try to make that date to start grad school. But then I ended up doing two two things while I was there. I actually extended my time at school a little bit because I minored in research, social science research methods,
Okay.
again, to make myself attractive to grad school and to understand research. I have to read and consume a lot of research to do an evidence-based practice. And so it was important to me to really understand that. That required some higher level statistics courses, which was a little bit of a song and dance with the math classes at community college and trying to make that all work out. And then I wanted to do a research project, but there wasn't really anything set up in the psych department for me to do that. So I also, because of my GPA, I was a straight A student. Yay. Suddenly I'm a
Yay.
good student, right? I said I was a bad student earlier. Suddenly I'm graduating with double honors, right?
Yeah.
So
That's amazing.
yeah, how does that happen? It happens with direction and purpose. That's how it happens. So I got invited to the global honors department, which is a global engagement minor. It's like a policy minor. It looks at economics, world events, market forces, that kind of thing, game theory, tragedy of the commons, all that kind of stuff, media, communication, stuff like that. And really tries to get you to think about the global and the local as interrelational things, right? And part of that was it gave me access to a fellowship, which was funding to do research. So
Okay.
so I got it's called the Bamford Fellowship in Global Engagements.
Uh-huh.
I believe that's the whole title. off the top of my head. And so they gave us a little bit of funding to do a research project. So I partnered with one of the psychology professors and another student. She and I got advised by that person, and we had sort of similar themed projects, but completely separate projects from each other. Where we actually got to run a study, do the statistical analysis, come up with results, and publish a thesis. Amazing experience. And I think I was honestly over prepared for grad school because of it, which was I felt over prepared. We got to the sort of stats and research classes, and I was like, yeah, okay, good, got it, let's go. So I was really happy that I did all of that because I think it really set me up for success.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just the amount of different things that you've accomplished since finishing that unemployment program. And I know this probably spans years of your life, and we're condensing it to a few minutes.
Yeah.
But during this time, what do you think you learned about yourself that you didn't know when you were starting that journey?
I think there was a lack of perseverance when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
This theme of that growth and fixed mindset and perfectionism keeps coming up, but I think that was the real problem for me. The perfectionism didn't go away because I wanted those straight A's, right? But
Right.
I I didn't I was less likely to quit when things got hard. And I really sort of built that muscle a little bit at a time, and things kept getting harder and harder, but I was more able to rise to meet that challenge.
Yeah,
I think the purpose and plan were a huge part of that. There's also just a bit of surrender, like, well, I'm in the middle of it now. I'm not stopping. I'm not putting my whole life on hold. I have grown-up bills. It's very hard to live on student loans when you have a mortgage.
for sure.
It's not I've been in poverty since 2018. Like, truly, it's been very uncomfortable. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. It's been hard. And I'm not gonna I see this as my time to do this, and that's the purpose of this time, and that's what I'm fully dedicated to. Like, I really am dedicated.
Yeah,
And it's borne out in the success, right? I
absolutely.
would not have described myself as like someone with grit or perseverance or successful before this. And I truly feel like I'm successful right now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Um, it is. It feels really good. People keep saying
Yeah.
doctor my friends when I arrive and I haven't seen them for a while and they haven't seen me since graduation, they're like, doctor. And I still haven't gotten used to it. It's still
You're like,
like,
who? Where?
I know. I'm like, oh, I blush and I'm just like, oh my God. But then I just feel so good about it. Like,
Yeah.
I did that.
You've literally like taken something from nothing
Yeah.
and you've created that reality, which is absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah.
And the idea of perseverance, especially if you are a little bit older in life and you have adult shit like
Hmm.
bills, health
Yeah.
issues, older parents, kids, a mortgage, whatever they may be, it becomes exceptionally harder to have that and not lean into the things that you're comfortable with. What do you think helped contribute to that grit and to that perseverance for you? Were there things you did in life that helped build some of that stuff up? Were there things that maybe you've cut out or that you added to help you sort of get to where you are now?
Yeah. I would say I cut out shame. Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how to say this without too much personal detail, but I think shame is a killer of growth. And
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
obviously if you're out here being a bad person and acting terribly, please have some shame on that. If you're doing that, you probably don't have any shame, which is also a problem.
Right, right,
But
right.
I think feeling ashamed of like not doing what I should do or not being where I should be, maybe things not being as easy for me as they seem like they were for other people,
Yeah,
feeling like I was like a really smart person, but just not doing anything with my life, like I had so much shame built around all of that. Objectively, I was doing something with my life. I had a job. I bought a house.
Yeah. You checked a lot of those proverbial boxes,
Yeah,
already.
I just wasn't believing it or believing in myself. And at some point, I just sort of let go of the way things should be. Said things aren't going to be the way they should be. There really isn't actually a should. I stopped comparing myself to other people. I started comparing myself to my own past abilities and seeing and actually reflecting and seeing progress, right? Like, okay, here's where I was, here's where I am now. Like, wow, that's way better, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just really helpful. It's really I'm also just I think a little stubborn.
Yeah.
So, if you can learn to use that to your advantage,
Yeah, for sure.
it can really help you get through some real tough times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not quitting when the going gets tough is definitely a great skill to have.
Yeah.
And, it's funny to me, the older I get, the more I think about what that line of distinction is between not quitting because you're not done with a job or, you got to get better and just being an old stubborn man. Right. And at what point do you sort of say, okay, that might be good enough. Maybe I'll try something different. And it's a hard thing to balance.
It is. I thought of one other thing while you were talking, which is that the other thing that got me through it was a good support system. Like,
But yeah,
you know, the people around you, the people you surround yourself with, people believing in you,
right.
someone or someones that you can talk to. Maybe for me, a lot of times it's like my dad or certain friends of mine who have, some good perspective and good life experiences, maybe look at the world differently than I do.
Right.
I think it's just so important to take perspective from other people because you can take that perspective, you can reflect on it, and then you can say, is this from me or is this not from me, right? But getting that perspective can really help you, especially if you're really in the thick of it, really feeling doubtful or really maybe perseverating on what should I do next. That's when it's really valuable to have um that support.
Yeah, I completely agree. You were accepted to the OT doctoral program at the University of Puget Sound. How did that feel when you got that letter
Oh my gosh,
and you were accepted to the program?
I was so happy. Actually, so the campus is local, and for the
Uh-huh.
entire time I was going to undergrad, every time I would drive by the campus, I was like, I'm gonna go to school there. I was I was like, just I'm gonna
Yeah,
get it in my head, right?
manifesting it.
I was
Yeah.
totally manifesting. I was, which is funny because that's really out of character for me. But I really, yeah, I really was just gunning for it, and I was so elated. Like it's one of the older programs on this side of the country. It's well established, well respected.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I was over the moon. I was like, I did it. I did. Like it's
Yeah,
really that's real. It felt real. It felt concrete.
right. Did it feel validating at all to the commitment you put in previously at undergrad and your
But yeah,
plan and all that stuff? Yeah,
but yeah,
I can imagine.
yeah. Because everything in undergrad was about getting accepted to grad school for me. Like
Right.
it was like I gotta get the good grades. I gotta look good on paper. I gotta get this fellowship. I gotta do this research. I'm gonna, um,
Yeah.
and then of course you also have to get a lot of hours of observation for your grad school
Yeah.
application, which was nearly impossible because COVID hit in the middle of my bachelor's. So
Oof.
that made getting healthcare observation hours very challenging.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah.
Gosh, that must have been really hard. What did you end up doing?
I ended up they gave a few alternates, which was to interview some OTs,
Okay.
which I did that. And then
Okay.
previous to COVID hitting, I actually had gotten in quite a few of those hours, but mostly in the pediatric setting. So yeah, I ended up basically just having to talk to people about what does this look like in your setting. And then
Right.
I did some extra writing. Like I had to write essays about everybody that I talked to. But, we made it work. It was
Right.
everybody adjusted for COVID, right? Like our classes all went online, everything. I was supposed to travel for my fellowship. We were supposed to do it in another country.
Wow.
I was supposed to be doing research in England. So
Yeah.
that didn't happen. We
Wow.
totally we totally changed directions, totally changed our project, had to adapt. I mean, when I say things got weird and tough, they got weird and tough, and
Yeah.
we just
Weird
kept going.
times. It feels like a whole lifetime ago now that
Mhm.
COVID's over. And, I don't know how much that has had a longer term impact than what we thought when we were in it. Cause like I know just from a work perspective from my job, there are things that's like ingrained in me now that I have a hard time trying to figure out. Like, can I ever go back into the office full time? Like I probably can't. And it's just a different way of approaching your work life balance or your life in general that COVID's really sort of like shifted.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very weird to be going into healthcare in the middle of a global pandemic. That was
You're like, is this the right choice?
I really had some questions during that time. I was like, am I doing this? I mean, I see patients with COVID, like during my clinicals and just
Yeah,
masked and gowned up and we do what we need to do in their room.
that's incredible.
It's still, I mean, COVID's still here.
Yeah,
The world decided to open up and keep moving, but it's still circulating around and, you know, still don't want to
all the
spread it.
things.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the doctoral program like for people that have never been in it?
Oh my gosh. I think I should define for people. I feel like I didn't understand that there were different kinds of doctorates before I went to grad.
I don't either. I'm a
Yeah.
newbie. Tell me. Tell
Okay.
me.
So a lot of people think a doctor is like a physician, right? But
Hmm.
doctor is an academic title, comes from
Right.
academia.
Or a rapper
Yeah.
like Doc.
There you go. And so there are research doctorates and there are professional doctorates. So like
Okay.
research doctorate is something like a PhD
Okay.
where you might spend like 5 to 7 years learning new things about something and publishing a written thesis. And that's that doctorate. That's
Okay.
also considered a terminal doctorate in academia. It's a kind of doctorate you could become a professor with.
Okay. Why did they call it a terminal doctorate? It just sounds very not great.
Terminal like the end, right? Not like deadly.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
So
Okay. I gotcha.
it's the highest level.
Okay.
It means you cannot go any further in academia in degrees.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can do postdoctoral studies. You can do a postdoctoral fellowship,
Right.
but that's not a new degree. It is the highest degree that you can get, right? And then professional doctorates, it's the highest degree you can get in that field.
Okay.
It's not considered a terminal doctorate academically, so there are different rules on depending on the discipline about how many professors can have a non-terminal doctorate versus a terminal doctorate. That's all accreditation stuff with college. I don't get into that. But essentially, you can't ever get full professorship with that if you wanted that, if you wanted to go that way. You can teach though. You can definitely teach a master's program. You can definitely teach at a community college. You could definitely, teach undergrad. It's also focused on application of existing research rather
Okay.
than creation of new knowledge.
Okay.
And often takes less time. So like an MD is a professional doctorate, a DVM veterinary and a OTD that I have, a DPT, that's what PTs have. Those are all professional doctorates.
Okay.
And basically what they require is some very intense learning and then hands-on application, learning in the actual clinic in context. And then in order to practice, you need to pass a board exam and pass licensure in the state that you want to practice.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
That sounds very intense. It
it
sounds
was
like
it
a
was
lot
really
of
intense.
work.
It was really
What
intense.
what was life like for you during this period of time?
Oh my gosh. I had a lot of lists of things I needed to read. It was just nonstop. A lot of requirements. We had in class, we had lecture, and then we also had labs. So like anatomy lab, um, we had labs for learning different interventions, labs for doing assessments because we have to be able to assess people's function, labs for learning adaptive equipment. We had wheelchair labs. We had, we had all this stuff, ergonomics labs, pretty intense testing, especially the anatomy tests. Those were grueling. Because you'd do a written test earlier in the day and then you'd have a little break and then you'd have to do a practical. And that was often just 60 stations around a room with like a bone or a muscle or a whatever, or the cadaver marked somehow with a nerve, and you have to know exactly what that is, but you only have 1 minute to figure it out before you have to go to
Oh,
the next station.
man, it's like a game show.
It was so intense. I remember being so stressed out, and you had a sheet of paper with all the numbers on it and
Yep.
clipboard, and you started at a number, and then you just went down from there and cycled back around.
Yeah.
Just with someone saying switch every 1 minute, switch. If
Yeah.
you didn't have it, you didn't have it. So you had to just identify it. You couldn't touch it. You had to
Right.
identify it on site. I remember being very stressed out for anatomy lab.
Yeah, I would be
Yeah.
too. That sounds like a game show, but with no prizes at the end. All you do is you pass. I
Prize
guess
is
that is a prize.
the prize is passing, and now you can move on to the next load of homework that you
Yeah.
have. That neuroscience class was also very humbling.
Yeah, I mean the title of it is very
Yeah,
humbling. I don't even know where to start with that.
you know what? Don't if you don't need to know, it's fine.
Right. Right.
There's a lot of very complicated things going on in our nervous system. Keeping them all straight is really important when you work on people who have neuro disorders, like a
Yeah.
stroke or a brain injury or, any number of things.
Yeah. What's Sarah, what's life like for you after UPS? What does it look like now?
I spent most of the summer stressing out about the board exam and studying.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It it's such a broad exam and a broad practice that studying for a test of everything across every disease, every process, every domain of OT across the whole lifespan, every age group, a question can come up about anything,
Right.
right? Any specialty, anything. It's, you have 4 hours and 180 questions, and it's barely enough time. And you have to get a 450 to pass, or you have to take it again, and it costs like $560 to take the test. And so I spent the summer absolutely fretting about this test and trying my best to study for it and not really knowing if my studying was effective or not,
Right.
taking practice tests and failing them.
I'm just getting flashbacks of the SATs and nightmares of not doing well.
It is so far beyond that. And then I look at what MDs have to do and I shudder because it's like full days of testing like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
over an even broader number of, they have to know all the conditions and all of the diagnostics. And yeah, it's it's intense. But I did pass it on the first try, which I was
Well,
very excited about.
congrats.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would be
yeah,
excited too. I would be
yeah.
excited too. Sarah, what advice would you give to somebody that's listening that feels like they're stuck or scared to make changes? Like to me, as I'm sort of thinking about the summation of our conversation, the thing that sticks out to me about your journey is that you've consistently had this courage to do different things and make changes when you feel like you're in a place where you're stuck. And I think that resolve is absolutely incredible, especially with the economy that is the way it is now. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to make a change or that needs to make a change?
Yeah, so I'm gonna set the economy aside for just a second on that one because I
Mhm.
that's a whole can of worms right now. I think even just in the course of this conversation, thinking about the time that I got to reflect,
Yep.
really helpful. I think get to the heart of who you are and what you care about. If you don't already have a really solid sense of that, do a dependable strengths exercise. There's also, I might have to look it up and maybe you can link it in the show notes, but
Yeah.
there's a website I use. I did my doctoral capstone on acceptance and commitment therapy, and that involves getting at your values. And there's a
Uh-huh.
wonderful values exercise website that can do something very similar for people.
Great.
Um,
Yeah, we'll link it below.
and uh, get at your values, get at your core of what makes you tick. Number one, ask yourself if what you're doing right now aligns with that or not.
Mhm.
Ask yourself if it's too scary to change totally right now, is there a way to make what you're doing now align with those values? A different position within the same field. I certainly tried to do that. I was actually thinking about going into user experience design because it's more research, more figuring stuff out. And that would have been a more slightly direct crossover. For me, I asked myself when I was thinking about leaving graphic design, so if I don't leave, what does my life look like 10 years from now? And am I okay with that? Right. And how uncomfortable am I? Truly. Like, is it just a little bit like uncomfortable? Am I just going through a hiccup? Or is it maybe something deeper than that that needs to be addressed? I think all those things could give you some clarity. And then thinking about the economy right now, I think what's on everybody's mind is a career that's a little bit future proofed against automation, against AI, against market forces. To a certain extent, you can predict some of that, but to a certain extent, you can't. And I think, we're going to see that disrupting healthcare as well. I don't think my industry is immune, but what I do think is I chose something where I gained myself a set of skills. I now have fantastic clinical reasoning. I now have fantastic critical thinking skills. I was always like someone to think about things, but I really didn't know how to uh, really analyze and critically think about something until I did all of that research and read so much research and really thought about how do you critique something? How do you really get at the heart of something? Those are skills that are um, really transferable to anything. Looking at skill sets, looking at industries that seem to still be growing, but you truly can't predict sometimes how these things will be disrupted. And
Right.
technology is, what is that principle where the amount it changes and the time gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So we're just changing every day at this point, every second. And I think that was originally talking about processing speed of computers, but it's kind of been applied to thinking about technology in general. Um, I don't know what the future holds, right? But I think for me, at the end of the day, we'll always need hands-on care for people,
Right.
right? AI can't feel somebody's muscle and realize that's what's causing their nerve pain in their hand.
Right.
I might be able to type something into AI or speak to AI to do my notes, or, I might be able to say, hey, here's a set of symptoms, and it might be able to spit out some ideas for me, but like it's not going to touch my patient at this stage. We're not Westworld yet, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
And it's such a shame that this stuff is disrupting things and putting people out of work instead of making people's lives easier, right? It should just be you've seen productivity rise forever and pay not rise with it. And um, And that's a shame, and that's going to change.
Yeah, I agree. Sarah, last question, and we will wrap it up the same way we started. If you could have any job title, whether fictitious or not, in the world, what would your job title be?
I'm going to go with Chief Getting Better Officer. I don't know. I just want people to get better. I want them to have nice lives. I want them to
I
do
love it.
well.
I love it. I love it.
I want them to move on and be happy that they don't feel that way.
Right. That's a great one.
I always
I
tell
hope that's a
people,
real title.
right? I always tell people, like, if I do a good job, you get to fire me. Right? That's my goal. My goal with every patient is get out of here.
Yeah.
You will.
Keep doing better, officer. All right, Sarah, future Keep Doing Better officer. I appreciate you coming on the show. Your story is inspiring and full of courage, and I wish you the best of luck in this next stage.
Thank you so much. I'll extend that to you too. And thanks so much for having me on. This has been really fun.
All right, we'll talk to you later.